Everyone is present except for Chris, so we weren't expecting him tonight, so. We have any discussion about the minutes from last meeting?
I was surprised to see the correction minute things, but do we
Yeah,
approve those now? Those were just numbers of resolutions going up one.
yeah, the problem is I must have missed a resolution in the count last year, and when that
Shifted
happened, it
them
just
all.
messed them all up, yeah.
Okay. I move we accept all of the minutes and the corrections.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Electric?
Very good. Meeting minutes are approved. November, September, December, and are there any items not on the agenda that the public wishes to bring up? That being negative, we'll move on. Items for discussion. We'll start with obstruction mitigation project.
Just waiting to make sure everything in our restoration takes so we can accept the project and close everything out, but otherwise, for the most part, that's done.
Okay. And are we waiting for the FAA to say it's good enough? Or?
No, we're just waiting to confirm that the grass is growing and
I see.
trees are doing their thing and basically making sure all the stuff we've planted is alive.
Okay, so
And
it's the property owners who say that it's good enough.
Well, with once, it's basically called being established, but yeah, once a tree leaves out, once grass is growing and you can't see the seam lines of sod that's been put down, that's kind of where the line of, all right, now it's yours. It's
And who's determining?
AECom, our engineers.
Okay. Right. And then, of course, the reason we're doing that is to get our certain approach back.
That's a good chunk of reason, yes. I do not have an
When did we
update
hear
for
about
that.
I was just looking at the,
Chris called Kitty Kissy-Max over the FAA, and she's looking into that. They're hopeful that it's just a matter of they're just going through and reviewing everything, but we don't have any answers on that. But he said he fully thinks we should have an answer before next month's meeting.
great.
Cause yeah, that was submitted to them like 6+ months
Yeah,
ago.
it's been a while, but, and she doesn't know what's been held up, but she's looking into it. of course.
It's a name that I haven't heard before that's looking into it, so that's hopefully progress.
Progress, yeah.
Yeah, so for the non-pilots in the group, when you come in at night, if you're following electronic course to runway 25, for example, the wind's in the wrong direction, you need to land on the opposite end of the runway. Right now, you can't circle to land at night because the danger from the trees that were sticking at you.
So you have to go way far out.
You can't-
So you can't land, I mean.
You just can't land at all.
Yeah,
In those conditions, it's when the clouds are low
Yeah.
and you can't land.
You know,
yeah, the only way you could come in is on an instrument approach, then you
Okay.
can't circle to land. That's a problem
that'd be really hard.
for a
Yeah.
lot of people, but especially for our fuel sales and jet airs people.
Okay,
And also the fact that we spent a whole bunch of money and did a whole bunch of parts and completed it a year ago.
And you can't.
And now we
It's
still don't have
still
what we,
waiting.
the mission that we went down
Right,
to do.
Yeah.
So,
Kind of
Okay.
frustrating,
exactly.
yeah.
Okay.
So hopefully, the FAA can hopefully put out a FTC NOTAM that says, okay, now you can circle the land. Just a question of when they do it.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right. Runway rehab, East End.
Well, good news and bad news. Actually, there's no really good news.
It's all bad.
It's all bad news. I'm going to combine both of these items.
Okay.
We went out to bid for both the rehab project and the threshold relocation. We did get bids for the rehab. We did not get any bids for the threshold relocation work. The feedback that we got, and Carl and I have been both talking to electricians and folks that would normally bid on this stuff, is the the time to get the materials is longer than what we were. So that being said, I had a conversation with the FAA earlier today. They also want to move the rehabilitation work to next year, along with the threshold relocation work, so that it all stays under the same grant, which is what the original plan was. So because of that, we don't have the money to do the rehab work this year. There is a new resolution that I am asking the commission to adopt, and that's essentially rejecting the bids. An acknowledgement that we are not moving forward with this project because the funding is not there.
Until, yeah.
So does that delay everything by an entire year?
That's the general thought process right now. We are still working with procedures to get a date out of them on when our slide happens. But the intent after the conversation with the FAA is to bid both of these projects either later this fall or over the winter, so that the manufacturers and suppliers have enough lead time to get supplies to the electricians, and then probably this time next year, we're still doing work.
There are orders,
Yeah.
Come on up.
Yeah, I mean, Mike and I, when we didn't get any bidders, weren't overly surprised, because the contractors are telling us that lead time on specifically cans of lights and everything going in, and the plastic pipe that run the cable through, that if you had, they said if we had to order today, this was a couple weeks before we did it, one contract said, if I had to order today and placed it, I would hope to get it by the end of October, just the materials and supplies. And we had one that we bid, a project I bid last year, that they ordered materials in February, and they got enough the other day. Still delayed. They actually are, that place is torn up, and so they're gonna be without some lights because of delays in materials and supplies. So we didn't get any bidders. We were kind of expecting that. In fact, to be honest, if we would have gotten a bidder that said they could do it, I would have said before we award it, I want to see the supplies in your yard. I want to come look at it, because if you say you can do it and we get stuff torn up, and then you come back and say, no, we're not getting materials and supplies. Now we're torn up. Now it's not to anyone's benefit. So in that respect, at least they didn't promise something they couldn't deliver.
why did we need new lights? I mean, I know that you might change the spacing of lights, but do we really need new lights or?
Well, I mean, the FAA, when you just typically, you would need all the cans, and you have to run all the conduit into.
What do you mean by a can?
The can of those basements,
Oh, okay.
they're about this big around and 2 feet deep or something. They're steel and they're
Okay.
galvanized, and that's what gets put into the ground. It's for everything. Every light goes in one every time we cross under a taxi or run with the cable and conduit. Sorry, I don't mean to have my back to you, but.
No, you're fine.
There's, so on this, I can't remember, I'd have to count, but we probably had 50 cans on this project. And much less the lights. I mean, you could say, yeah, we could reuse lights, but again, when the FAA is paying for it, I mean, if the lights do have a little bit of not a lot, but enough that it makes sense to get new lights when you're getting everything else in it. So I don't think the lights are the problem. It's the cans and the conduit. And then, like Mike said on the other one, we had a good bidder that was right at what our estimate was, and it was a good company that we have good reputation, or good. They have a good reputation. I had people in my family that worked with them said, yeah, they'll do a good job for you. But unfortunately, the FAA had us one of these two tied together. So it's like, if we're not going to do both of them, we don't get to do either one of them.
Were there any projects that were a year out that they could swap?
The date?
I mean, yeah, like on the ground. I mean, do we have anything that was coming next after that that we can pull up?
Oh,
Not really,
Projects.
just because everything, I mean, the way the FAA funding works, it doesn't really work like that. We can't just plug in a new project and still use the money, but our next projects focus on the change of the 1230 lanes. And I don't think there was enough there to do that.
And you're
If I
right,
remember the
same
estimates.
issues there too.
well, and
And yeah,
the
it's gonna be
mayor is-
some of the same.
That would, that person, that approach procedures, just, I mean, when we started this was before the pandemic.
Mhm.
And so we thought, okay, this should give be about right on timeframe.
Mhm.
Well, they were able to get through a lot of the approach development before it hit a year ago, and so it's pretty much done. But now the construction, because of the pandemic, is delayed.
Right.
And so now we're trying to find out, is there a slot for next summer that we can pick up? Because one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to go to the bottom of the list again, because I know that they're way behind the FAA. So it's okay, how can we do this? And that's just, the FAA just told Mike today that they didn't want us to just bid it immediately and fast track it, so.
That's a shame, because that was gonna be my next question. Why don't we just bid it right away and they can order the materials?
Well, see, that was the thought. And my concern is if the FAA doesn't, if they say, well, we can't have a grant to you until say next May, so then what's gonna happen is if we bid it, we award it, and then the contractors won't be able to order stuff, and hopefully the supply chain will be better in a year, but there's no guarantees. And so the hope was we could bid it soon.
Yeah.
We could get them under contract with federal funding. And then with the federal funding, what that will allow them to do is place all of their orders, and federal projects allow you to pay for materials on hand. So when their stuff came in, we could pay for them to be holding on to it. And then by spring, as soon as weather allowed, they would have sitting in their yard, they would have all the wire and the conduit and the cans and everything to go. And then it's just a matter of going out there and installing it.
The FAA won't.
Well, we're hopeful that they will let us bid it, like Mike said, in the fall or latest in the winter, and that they could offer us an early grant since this was planned for this year.
Yeah.
And that way we could at least maybe get the ordering done in February rather than in June next year or so.
Can we,
What portion of the project cost is the materials?
2/3 of it.
Probably on this one because of all the having to put the lights in the shoulders and all that. That might be a little high, but yeah, but it's a significant portion.
can we use any of that money at all to do the parking or something?
The parking is under state funding, and the federal
Okay.
funding is
They
very
would-
specific.
It
about
wouldn't let
what
us
we
change
can
it.
use for.
Okay. It would just,
Like Mike said, unfortunately.
Okay.
We got a good bid for that one project. Unfortunately, we can't use it. So.
yeah,
And
okay.
As I was sitting in the parking lot right before I came in, I called Chris again because he called this. Her name's Kissy Maxfield. We have a Kit C, and and works for us, and then there's a Kissy that's at the FAA. So I get make sure I do a document. But she has been his point of contact, and she's the one that's checking on circling approaches. And she also was going to check on the dates and what. But she did say to Chris, she goes, don't want to slide to the bottom of the, go back on the bottom of the list.
Okay.
Because she says it's out there, and she goes, and they are so far behind.
I mean, they were behind 2 years ago when we set the date and they said it would be over 2 years,
I know.
before we got it. And that's why I really feel like we really screwed it up. I mean, is there anything we could have done differently? Because I mean, we
Sound
should
like
have
it.
known for 2 years.
Well, they have been delayed they said it would take 2 years back then, and that's why we started it back then. And
Yeah.
they said that it's still, I guess, on schedule to publish this October if we were ready for it physically.
Mhm.
So it took them about that 2.5 years that they said it would. But the ones that have been getting on the line since then, what I don't understand, I'm going to ask I told Chris, I said, I want to get on a call with you with the FAA. Is, why would you have to go to the bottom of the list if you move it? Because it's not like they have to do all the work. The work's already done. All you would have to do is change the dates, and I don't understand that, but that's a conversation I'm gonna have.
And for the date, is there any sort of, I mean, as far as what they're looking for temporary markings, and I mean, can we put up temporary markings and lights, shoot the approach, and then remove them? I mean, it's not like it shouldn't be rocket science, I would think. I mean, what do they need to be able to say, okay, this is approved, and then,
We would have to, we'd have to have the permanent lights in. Now, that said, we would not have to have the PAPI in to get the approach.
Okay.
PAPI is a kind of a separate issue.
Mhm.
But we would have to have the threshold lights. One thing I'm not sure of is if they would allow the side edge lights to be where they are, because they wouldn't be standard.
Mhm.
I don't know if they would allow that or not. but the minute you did that, I don't know if they would let you, since the PAPI would be really high, then I don't know if they would let you keep flying it as is, or if they'd make you turn it off until
Mhm.
it was completely done.
Well, I mean, I just
Very
didn't know if there was, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if there's any way they could fly what it's supposed to be and bless it without deactivating what's currently there.
Well,
I mean, the pavement's there. I mean,
I
you
know
know, it's not like it's,
It's just their rule.
Yeah.
It's worth
Okay.
asking.
It's
worth-
worth
I mean,
worth
we can ask
asking.
that
It's
question.
worth asking.
I'm so familiar with what they
Yeah,
will and won't allow that I'm not real hopeful about it, but
Sure.
I'll always ask the question.
Yeah.
that sounds good.
Thank you.
Anything you can do. So, I know it's a big issue for the airport. And for Jet Air.
But and Mike and I have talked, one thing we do agree on is what we would, at least we want to make sure everybody is in agreement with it. We feel it would be better to delay the whole thing than to get started, get something done that where we lose and we don't have any approach for 6 or 8 months.
Probably horrible.
And so that's what, we don't want to go down a road that,
Yeah.
There's-
what's at the dead end of it is not something we're happy with.
yeah.
Right.
Well, what I also was curious about with the project materials was, is if the airport could order these materials to have, since it's FAA approved grant, would they reimburse or not?
I
or any
mean-
of those things? Just so that way we've got.
That's a question, is if we could, the stuff that's long lead time. I mean, I won't say problem, but the thing is you'd have to upfront the cost and hold the cost until the grant came in. Now, that said, that's a question, that's a good idea, Matt. I can, at least, again, I'll ask that.
It'd be worth knowing what the bill is.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
like I said, my big concern is if we wait too long, then it's a year from now for the ordering, we'll push it again,
Yeah.
really late, but if we could get stuff ordered, that was one of the reasons we said, let's go out and rebid it now so they could get things ordered.
What was the estimate on the project with the lights?
450.
450, yeah, roughly.
I think the lights are about 300.
Well, let me look, and I'll talk to there are 2 contractors that I know that do a lot of airport work
Mhm.
that are ordering these things all the time. The ones that were telling me, hey, you're not gonna get these materials all the time. I can quantify and I could quantify what we would need just to do the lighting without maybe even what we need to do the pathways, just to get the approach.
Yeah.
And then see and find out what items, the minimum ones are that are the long lead time, and say, is this something, if we order these things, what's the cost? And they could give me what their cost would be.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't have to pay them until they delivered anyway, right?
Right.
Well, there-
And when they did, we'd just be talking, we'd have to pay the interest until,
Yeah.
The grant. kicks
But
in.
I mean, and that would be something we'll check with the FAA, say, to avoid the lead time issue that's been was the concern this year. Could we do this?
Or
next
you
year's
could line up
projects?
delivery right at about the time the project's supposed to start.
The primary issue is you'd have to rewrite the bid specs to bid all of that out independently, which,
Might
Oh,
change
that's
the
the
line.
Well,
Well,
Fun time
we
to do that.
do it. I mean, we do it.
Yeah.
well, we just by law, we still have to write out that because of the price of that contract, by law, we're gonna have to have a formal bid process. That's not something we can just go out and talk to
Mhm.
2 or 3 electricians and say, what can you give me for,
Well, I mean.
what's it gonna cost for this? We'll have to, we'd have to go through a formal,
For the material.
yeah.
Okay, well, we got months.
Well, but that's
Yeah. the
extra
problem
cost
you run
of
into
Bolton
is-
and Mink
is
that
you
has
have
to
have a
rewrite the bid specs.
Well, you
and-
have to have a separate bid just on acquiring
Yeah.
those components, and then the contractor may end up being different.
Yeah, that's just it.
Yeah, that's
You
like-
run the risk
you'd have to
and that's
take
why.
out- You'd have to basically in the construction bids, say, these items will be provided.
Right.
You know?
And
But you've got to find a bidding company to do
Right.
that. I mean, for the material itself. And the only companies that are going to want to bid it are the ones that are going to want to do the work. And if they don't get the work, then
Right, and
And then they're-
I would assume that maybe, say for when you do maintenance work on your lights, do you ever buy directly from some of the electrical suppliers?
Yeah, individually, but that's like $600.
Yeah.
That's
the
not,
size of the
that's
contract.
not $100,000 worth of
Yeah,
lights.
but I mean, based on the size of the
Equipment.
city, Eric, I can't remember, what's the formal bid process threshold for
Well, are you talking about as a public improvement project, which I think we're talking about, and then it's, you gotta look if it's vertical or horizontal
It's
infrastructure?
horizontal. So
Yeah, it's horizontal, even with the lights and stuff?
everything, when we talk with the FAA, they
Okay.
consider horizontal.
Okay. I'd have to go back and I can probably look it up. real
Isn't it
quick.
like 80 or?
No, it's, you're talking about between a competitive quotation and.
Right,
normal,
because
yeah.
a competitive quotation would be pretty easy to do.
Yeah,
compared to
I was
formal
thinking it
bid
was
process.
over 100, but I can see here. real quick.
Well,
And
for that
like I
matter,
said,
you get a
we might not
competitive
get everything
quotation
we
on this
need, but if we-
component, and a competitive quotation on this component. Because it's.
No, that's,
the-
you'll get in trouble if you start.
Well,
parceling it
but I
out.
mean,
Yeah,
the
but
same guy
that's-
who
that's
makes the
illegal.
runway light isn't the same guy who makes the conduit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're not allowed to split it.
But suppliers where you, like when a contractor orders their electrical supplies, I get a 50-page thing to review and it has lights and it has
Mhm.
cans, it has conduit, it has wire, it has
Yeah.
a PAPI unit, it has, I mean, in this case, the FAA's furnished a PAPI, unit, but so it's typically through a supplier, I mean, you don't.
Through a single supplier.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want all the parts to match.
Not saying it's not worth the effort to look at, but it's not the route to go.
It would be somewhat convoluted.
All right, seems so simple.
Well,
Okay.
well, like I say, we gotta start getting creative. I mean, we had 2 years and we missed it. We don't wanna have 2 years again.
Yeah, we don't. That's-
you know.
We don't want to have 2 years and we also don't want to be down on approach for several months.
By then, they'll make us redo the obstructions 2 years from now. I'm serious, they will. I bet. They won't just take your data from 2 years ago.
All right, well, the answer, you said it's horizontal infrastructure is what we consider all this stuff. We are a city over 50,000 in population. It's 72,000 before you get to a competitive bid.
We'd be over that anyway, so. Like Mike said, it would potentially raise a lot more questions or concerns than it would answer. but,
Okay.
I
Well,
mean,
thank you.
We've got conversations with the FAA and with both on the approach side and on the AIP, which is the improvement side. We need a lot of answers to, again, because this year it's, I recommend anybody in the future, don't do this when there's a pandemic on the way, because it slows everything down, so. It's slowing down a lot of, it's not just here, it's
So everywhere.
it's in like construction costs for anything vertical, just going out of sight.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think it's important to do whatever we can to be creative and get the stuff, because if you're on a 2-year waiting list, there's gonna be 1,000 other people whose projects are also flubbed up. So there's a good chance if we can figure out how to get the stuff. We can.
Well, and that's without $2 trillion hitting the infrastructure system.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Once that
just what they
hits,
need.
you won't get anything. That's the irony of the infrastructure bill, is that's gonna stop all infrastructure.
Well, I guess the first thing we ask FAA is whether we can somehow buy stuff and they can reimburse us when the grant comes. At least we have the answer to that question. We can decide how we want to.
Or better yet, if they let us get creative to hold our date.
Yeah.
But do we have any
No.
assurance that they will?
Hold it if, I mean, we can hold the date for,
Yeah.
Right, we don't want to take a risk.
Grants are not guaranteed.
Well, keep us posted.
All right.
well, Mike and I talk almost daily.
Yeah.
And we know you appreciate the value we add in this conversation.
Go home and take a couple of ibuprofen. All right. Airport
Before we
operation.
move forward, yes, we don't have any assurance of it, but if we were to do it and the airports follow that expense, let's say we know that they're not gonna reimburse that money, can we do it or no?
In other words,
We gotta figure out how to pay for it. We don't have that much cash to pay for it.
we got $100,000 from the city every year, don't we?
That's our matching for every other grant we go after.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
But
not saying you
it'd be-
can't,
But it'd be
but
more
that's a
than,
decision you'd have to make.
but it'd still be more than 100,000.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know what the
It just-
materials
I mean, it
cost is,
just seems
but
like-
it's a $450,000 project and
So
What
it'd be a-
even
really- what
it'd
it
be a couple
really
years
comes- what
worth.
it really comes down to is if you can get the order in And even if there are a few months, if you could get financing for that, and even if the project fell through, you can still sell it at a profit because everyone's going to need it. So it's kind of that, do I want to get my, slot and then take the risk that I may end up having that few minutes of interest payments before the project starts, and then if it doesn't start at all, turn around and sell it back. If you can get a guarantee to buy it back, and I would think with the shortages we're talking about, you could get that guarantee.
Yeah, we need that in the contract up front, because otherwise I think the city has policy about selling surplus materials. It's got to go through gut deals.
Yep. You want to make it like it's right in the contract, so it's kind of a buyback, Or you make it as an option, that'd be even easier, so we never take delivery.
Yeah.
So, see, I do purchasing an option on future delivery. That would avoid the
Hot futures.
dollar amount. Yeah, I mean, it'd be 2-3% of the purchase price, if that what your option price would be.
But we got to make sure what we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
If we accept it, it's got to be reimbursable by the FAA.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so that's the question.
that's,
the key.
Yeah, okay, well, let's stay in that creative mindset.
Thanks a lot.
no, we will research and we'll ask the questions.
All right, looks like.
Do need to approve the resolution though.
Oh, yes.
I can make that motion, yeah. So I make a motion for a resolution rejecting bids received on June 3rd for the rehabilitation runway East End project for the foregoing discussion and reasons.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, Electra.
Aye.
Aye.
Judy,
Hi,
Warren, aye. Okay, motion is carried. All right, moving on then to airport operations. First item on the agenda, I understand, is another potential disappointment.
It's a fun news meeting.
I quit.
Uh,
After this
You
month,
got
I
the
refuse to
simulator, I
return.
mean.
Yeah.
Take some consolation of that.
Solar power project.
yeah.
well, earlier, yeah,
We have the committee here.
we do have the
We are
committee here.
here.
Earlier this week, the subcommittee met and we talked kind of one-on-one and overviews of the plans. We did get 5 proposals in. That's the good news. So we had responsive companies. That's great. The issue is the responses kind of have a range of system designs and costs, and the biggest issue we have is our runway lights, and having a spot for panels to feed the meter, which is on the electric vault, which is over there where no building surface area is. The subcommittee, as you can tell, didn't invite anybody to interview because we felt a broader discussion with the commission was warranted on, do we go back and the two primary issues are, do we go back, talk to the FAA, plan out some area on the ground where we can potentially research and get a pre-approval on some ground mounted stations. And then the second issue is, even with the proposals we got, the costs on several of them are above what the airport's already paying for electricity. So when you factor that in, if you take the airport out of the project, well, the university and Jet Air can save some money. That puts all of the risk on the airport rather than letting them go out and do their own solar power installations if they choose to. And I don't think that's a good spot for the airport to be in.
Right, and the other disadvantage, as I see it, is they pay for everything, but then they set the charge per kilowatt hour.
Mhm.
And that right now, I guess, would be somewhat less than we're paying.
Mhm.
No,
Nope.
not even less than
No.
what we're paying.
No, I
So,
did a analysis here. I can show you a little
Okay.
later on, but basically we pay about 80 cents a kilowatt hour right now, about 70,
8 cents. yeah.
sorry, 8 cents, 7, 8 cents, right?
Yeah.
If we look across the bids, we cut them in at 8.5 cents, 7.3 cents, that was Eagle Point, 14 and 10 cents, 10 cents. Now this one came in at 6 cents, but it's a really big system. It's a 0.5 megawatt system. And then this one here came in around 10 cents, and that was a 1 megawatt system. We should probably be in around that 300 kilowatt system range. And coming in with a 1 megawatt system, I don't know what they're thinking.
That's, yeah,
What's more is a lot of these have kickers, so they're anywhere from 2.5% to 3%, I want to say, accelerators. So they're going up every year. Even if I use about 2.5% inflation, we'd be at about 12 cents in 20 years. All the others are going to be starting around 13, 14 cents all the way up to 29 or 22 cents, 23 cents a kilowatt. And the buyouts aren't necessarily cheap either.
No.
They're
In 20
ridiculous.
years, they're, there was one in there that was around $100,000 and some for the
Jeez.
buyout at 20 years.
So we pay more now and pay more later.
Mhm.
That's a
And
great
every year along the
Yeah.
way.
And what was more is that when you really look at the usage, if you exclude the runway, which is about a third of our usage,
Mhm.
and then what we figured jet air and the university was another 65% of our usage, you're left with the terminal, which is 5% of our total usage, about 15 kilowatts, which is about what you put on your house. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
so we could just buy a system for the terminal if we want to do that.
Right. Right.
About 10, 15 grand or something like that anymore.
Might be a little more than that, but not much.
Not much more.
And the companies range from little ones to giant ones that work in Europe and all over
Yeah, then that was,
South America and
that was
like-
that one with the 1 megawatt system. I don't even think they looked
They-
at the site. I think they had an algorithm that did it for them.
yeah,
They
it just didn't make any sense what they filled out.
I think they had an algorithm that just pulled up Google Maps and did some,
Yeah,
just did some math and stuff and never looking at
I
it.
think it's time
It's
to go back
crazy.
to the drawing board personally.
I
I
think it's,
I
we could
like
drop
your
it
idea,
probably.
Scott, about thinking about at least the possibility of what we can do on our own. And the reason we didn't explore this before, as I remember, was we don't get a tax break.
Mhm.
correct.
They get a tax break, but they still charge us more. So if we did it ourselves, then electricity would essentially be
We could run,
either free or
we can run a cash flow on that to see what that payback looks like. I mean, that's something we've not done, but we can certainly do
I
it.
figured for my home system, with the tax break I got, the payback is somewhere in 5 or 6 years. So it might be twice that for
Mhm.
the airport, but it still might be worth considering.
Mhm.
Yeah, it absolutely can be. I think that our biggest issue is, I mean, our largest usage is, well, two issues. Yeah, cash is one of them. Cash is always going to be one of them. But our usage, even for the buildings we operate, the terminal, the hangars, our usage is the runway
It's the
lights.
runway lights,
If we're
and,
not doing anything with the runway lights,
And
then
where is the connection that we would have to make?
on the electric vault, this brick building that's up here,
Okay.
on the other side of
The
the.
difficulty is getting
be
the
right
FAA requirement, the ground level system, right?
Yeah, and what we have to do, it's similar to what we do every construction project. We have to update our layout plan, but we have to kind of plan all of that stuff out, and we'll have to do probably, I would guess, educated guess, but they're gonna want us to do the glare study and things like that to kind of eliminate, some of that stuff, some of those unknowns. If we want to put, kind of where the university instruments are right now, if we wanted to put a solar panel system there, because it's near the building and running a wire to that meter shouldn't be all that difficult. We say, okay, here's where almost like we're doing a building study, here's the corners of where it's going to be, here's, kind of the materials that we're proposing. We've got 5 different proposals we can glean some information on and present that to them and run and see what they say, but that's going to take a little bit of time. And we can talk to Bolton and Mink and see if they would assist us again. Because it will take some engineering and some shop drawings and stuff like that to update.
One additional point though, and that was something that you might not have picked up, in some of the quotes, they did not quote all of the buildings.
Well, most of them, they had something that they were kicking out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
2 or 3 of different
at
ones.
least 2 or 3
Yeah.
didn't include solar panels for this building, for the terminal itself, because it was too small.
Yeah.
At least too small for them to make money.
Yeah. Right, 'cause I mean,
That's the
certainly it
point.
has enough roof area for you to generate the power. for
No,
the
they
building.
needed, they've needed what they felt was like a minimum threshold, otherwise our
Mhm.
kilowatt per hour is gonna be like in the 30, 40 cent range.
So,
Is everyone in favor of exploring this further? Maybe asking.
I think there's two options we could explore further. One would just be, as I'll say, a gesture for the city and sustainability. What would a purchase system for the terminal look like, and would that make financial sense? And then second, more broadly, just understanding what is involved on the FAA side to power the lights. And even then, I mean, it's not direct, right? I mean, we're powering the grid during the day so we can take it back. during
Yeah,
the night,
it's
so
still on
It's an
the
offset.
Mid-Am grid. It's just an offset. We can generate, power during the day.
Right.
so can I make a motion that we reject the 5 bids as is?
Yes, is there any discussion of that motion? Okay,
Is that a second?
I will second it.
Do we need a resolution for that?
No.
then? Okay.
Okay, all in favor of rejecting the current bids for the solar power?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, I think you're
Yeah.
against, but you just.
I really want this, yeah, I don't care what it costs.
No, we'll go back and I mean, there is some good information from the proposals that we can glean, and
Yeah.
this was a useful process.
It was, yeah.
It was a good exercise, and we got a lot of different perspectives. It was surprising how different they were between the proposals.
Yeah.
But one thing that was consistent is that you started seeing, at least among most of the bidders, about what our usage rate was, and got a lot smarter about how they put their business case together.
And I think
I'll add one thing, there are 2 other solar projects that are going on with the city right now that perhaps we can learn from. One is on the new Public Works building, and the other is at the Terry Trueblood. I think that one is going to be quite a bit smaller. The one at the Public Works building is a lot of surface area, it's a large building. And those are both a lot less complicated in that they don't have all these other users and so forth, that they're just, city use on site.
Well, Terry Trueblood, pretty similar.
Yeah.
About the same size building, kind of the same use case.
Yeah.
So that would be good to know. And then there was one company that also did the Johnson County offices. That was a good point.
And Carl, the other question I asked Mike the other day was replacing incandescent bulbs for the runway with LEDs. I mean, that would potentially be like 1/4 of the electricity.
We had talked about that, and we talked to the FAA. The concern is that we're relighting like about 40% of the runway, or almost half. But the FAA will not let you light part of one, say one runway, one taxi, or something like that, with one type of lights, and have a different type of lights on the other.
Because you need that consistency of that.
Right, because they visually look different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so if we had a project where you were doing the whole runway, then we could look at LED light. But they will not let you put LED on half of it and leave ports or on.
Are there replacement bulbs you just screw in that, have bayonet mounts, whatever, that would just replace current bulbs with LED bulbs?
Not that I'm aware of, it's a different fixture.
Different fixtures, so we have to buy
I
new
mean,
fixtures.
yeah,
well, because there was also the issue where they needed to have or maybe the LED light bulbs themselves have a heating element in them.
and that's something, I mean, there are 2 schools of thought on heating LED lights. Some people will always use heaters because in this part of the country, sorry, I can't, I'll say it, so not everybody's still trying to see me hidden there. Some people, like they said, they always use them because when you get ice and snow, the problem with LEDs, they don't generate heat to melt it off.
I see.
Now that said, when you use the heater on them, the energy savings is minimal. Because it's within a few,
Okay.
what's been a few years ago, you did a cost analysis and the payback because of the cost of the fixtures. Now, the fixture costs have come down, so it's gotten somewhat better, but the payback was over 30 years because of the time that when the lights were on, you needed the heater so much of the time. Now, that said, there are airports that don't ever use heaters on them. Waterloo, I've talked to the manager up there, ops guy up there, and he quit putting heaters on them. He said, I need them 3 or 4 days a year, but the rest of the time, what they do is they're warm in the winter, the birds sit on them and crap all over them. And they have all these maintenance people are out there cleaning off lights.
Yeah.
And he said for the few times a year that I wish they had heaters, so they just quit using them. I'm right now doing 3 projects and with LEDs, and we just discussed it, and we're not putting heaters on any of them.
Mhm.
But
This
that's
would
it.
be another
There will be a-
major capital project, it sounds.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then, but they would, a few days a year, you wish you'd have it because of the rest of the time. It costs extra to put them on, you lose the energy efficiency of it.
It'd be interesting to know what the airports that have done it, what they think their payback is. Maybe that'd be a good place to start.
I can check with some people who've had them.
Without doing anything more than that, just
Yeah,
try
I
to
mean,
see.
it seems like that would cut our electric, if most of our electric bill is the Renway lights, that would cut our electric bill by 75%.
But then that would be a couple days that we couldn't have anybody land, right?
Well, when you're actually working on them, yeah, you'd have to close down to, oh, you mean, no,
No,
you mean when
cold
they
days.
freeze up?
When they freeze
You
up.
can't, I don't know,
It depends on how much snow and ice is on them.
you
whether
might not be
can
landing
see-
anyway.
We just have Jetter go out there.
With a blow dryer. with
Chip 'em
off. Who does stuff?
Chip them off without breaking the light.
Yeah.
Give you some alcohol spray.
Well, we could-
Well, that's true, yeah, alcohol spray may be the best thing.
Well, I mean, and there, it is labor. I mean, for the 3 times a year, we could probably afford to have the lights cleaned off. It's not that big a deal.
Well, and the time to do it would be when you're already replaced, and how many, say, for the runway 25 threshold was already 40 lights. or
Well,
something like
and
that.
one thing, and I have to admit, I don't know the answer for, but when you ask, I should know, and I don't. And that's that, is there any sort of retrofit that would minimize the cost of a new fixture? And I don't know if there is or not.
I'd like you to
think
call
there
me.
is.
Typically, it's a new fixture,
Yeah.
because when you order them, you order either the LED one or a quartz one or an incandescent.
Mhm.
But I don't know if anybody makes something that would be less expensive than a whole new fixture or not.
What do these bulbs look like? They're not, you screw in.
Sounds like
You
we
can
need
take
to
a
have
look at the taxiway lights.
Sounds
They're-
like
they're
we need to
LED.
have a little field trip come out
Sounds
here.
that way, yeah.
Open up some
You
runway
have a
lights.
screwdriver?
Yeah, all of our taxiway lights are LEDs, right? The blue ones?
Yeah.
Most of them.
And when you replace a runway light, you are the guys who do it, right?
Yeah, and it's,
What's the bulb look?
well, we actually typically replaced on the stand because it typically got ran over by something. The
Oh,
bulbs
I
aren't
see. So you haven't
typically-
had bulbs burn out.
Yeah, they have some. You know, Mike, on that, I haven't been out.
For the LED ones, I don't think I've seen any.
No, I
The
mean,
LED
the
ones
the
stick,
incandescent bulbs, what are they like?
They're just a
They're
bipin
regular
bulb.
bulbs.
Yeah,
But
it's
those
a,
other meant LEDs, yeah.
It's-
The only thing is with quartz, ones, you
Okay.
have to watch, you don't get oil from your fingers
Yeah.
on you, wear a glove or something.
Yeah, or,
a bipin bulb that looks
oh,
like
one
that.
of those.
Yeah.
They're- I know that they're. You can get LED quartz, LED replacements for quartz, standard quartz bipin bulbs. Absolutely.
Well, let us know next time.
I'll look into it, because.
Yeah,
like
I don't know if
said,
they're
when you ask
acceptable to the
question, I
FAA or
don't know.
That's the primary issue because the FAA has been super slow on
Yeah.
certifying.
Bottom line is, we would need about 100 to 120 kilowatt system for our runway lights. We'll need about a 10 to 15 kilowatt system for the terminal, and then that's it. That's all we've got left.
And one panel, what, 300 kilowatts, something,
One panel,
one of the 4x6.
it's like a, like, what, 1.5 watts.
I don't remember off the top
It's
of my
not,
head.
yeah, I mean, a kilowatt system, we'll say a kilowatt system's about 100 square feet, something like that. I think a 4 kilowatt system would be about the size of your garage.
My home system, I have, I think, 23, 24 panels, which generates 50 kilowatt hours a day.
50 kilowatt hours a day, you're probably around the 5 kilowatt system, 4 or 5 kilowatt system. That gives you an idea. So you need about 3 times that system for the terminal. You would need about 20 times that for the runs.
But if we had Ds, 5. I mean, that's a huge savings, huge savings on solar panels, just with LED bulbs.
Well, and that, I mean, and you could look at it that way, right? If it's an energy replacement system, you look at it both in terms of the consumer and the producer. And so the project isn't just solar panel replacing for the lights, you look at it as a whole system, so that's another way you can run it. But then, I mean, there's costs either way.
Yeah, less overall energy use for gardens, which is a good thing for the planet. Sort of why we wanted to do it in the first place. Right, so, okay, well, let us know what you find out, Carl. We got all kinds of jobs for you.
Budget?
Budget, this is June, so this is the last few weeks of the budget for the fiscal year. All in all, I don't think we've had anything too terrible that's happened. We've weathered our storm of COVID downturn, and we had almost $100,000 worth of COVID aid that came to us, so between the two to the airport, so all in all, we're doing okay.
Which is very good.
And, good news. Of course, we're not
And
quite
the COVID relief we get to keep no matter what, right? Even if we don't use it.
Yeah,
right?
that's ours. Yeah, we've already claimed it and used it. We used it for offsetting salaries and some general maintenance that Jet Air provides. So we've already got that on our books.
The truck, snow thingy and.
Snow plows in. Came in April, so we haven't had a chance to use it, but
But the expense is there. it's
Yep.
Taken care of, so.
Yep.
We covered a lot.
good. All right, events.
nothing new in terms of the events, just updated the dates for stuff that's taken place. The drive-in movie, the first one happened over the Memorial Day weekend. It looked like it went off pretty well. This weekend, there's the autocross group that's going to be on the south of the runway. So all in all, yep.
Okay, Jet Air, we're back to you.
I'll hand out these, just a single page this time, so I'll just take one, pass around.
Where are we looking
Basically
There you
for.
go, I tried.
Yeah.
at? It's not in the agenda packet. What page?
But really, there isn't anything on here that's, I mean, I don't know that there's anything really worth hardly highlighting, just more of the same between mowing and general maintenance. That's pretty much it. So anyway. Yeah. But yeah, nothing really from that standpoint. As far as Jet Air side goes, everything's still been busy. The airport's been really busy, which has been fun to see. Even just a lot of, like if you've been out lately, just a ton of 172s and 182s and bonanzas and, stuff like that, it's actually been just kind of crazy to see that like almost all the tees have been folded on a normal day, not even a game day or anything like that, which has been kind of neat.
Very busy.
Very busy. Yeah.
Anything you can attribute that to?
I don't know if it's people having a little bit more flexible schedules to where they can get out. One thing we know is that the market, like even in the same way that RVs and cars and all that kind of stuff has been crazy, that airplanes just aren't available. A lot of the stuff that typically was relatively easy to find. We spent 6 months looking for an old 182 for a guy, and the one that we bought was on the market for less than an hour, less than an hour and a half.
That's amazing.
So should we have waited to sell our 182?
It's gone up a little more, but but I still think it was a good time. I mean, it's you just never know when it's going to change, and typically when it changes, it comes pretty quick. But
That's amazing.
but yeah, the people are actually using it, which is awesome to see.
That's good.
Prices have been going up like crazy. I mean, our fuel is up almost $1 since it was up 85 or 90 cents basically since the election. And for both Jet A and 100 low lead. And there's just such a and we've been trying to leave it full. Luckily, Jet A only comes from Coralville, but you know, by being able to have that, we're at least able to delay. You know, if the price ever relieves for a week, our prices are updated weekly. So if it ever hiccups for a week and you have a little bit lower price, we can kind of load up on fuel. But you have to take it by full tanker load.
Were you impacted a few weeks ago by the Colonial Pipeline or anything?
We weren't. We topped off again. You know, we stayed topped off, but it was mainly down in the southeast, and most of the airports were okay from a supply standpoint. You know, we advise our crews and we call ahead and check on all the spots. But we didn't really experience anywhere where they inhibited us. So anyways, that's been something to keep an eye on. Our 100 low lead price has gone up, I think, twice, and it's probably due again to go up. Luckily, it's been, you know, you have a lot less flowage. So I mean, we're still working down 8,000 gallons from a couple months ago, but you know, continue to is the estimate. So anyway, and that was the thing where we always run reports on just our costs between locations, and of course, Galesburg and Burlington go through fuel so much slower. Like, oh wow, that report can't be right. That's a whole $1 a gallon higher cost. Than well, no, that's right. You know, that's just the first time we had to take a load. So anyway, so that's something, charter and all that. One big change that's coming is Elwin's been our shop manager now for, you know, he's been with us for 8 years, and he has taken another job. So, and it's, I mean, I probably would have waited another month to tell you, but because it just kind of happened, but we are feeling really pretty good about it. He's going to be a corporate pilot, getting out of the maintenance side, and I still think he's going to be spending some time around because of just by virtue of his new job, he has some flexibility with that. But we are pretty well equipped in that Joe, you know, El's been so busy that Joe has been kind of filling those shoes a lot anyway. So we've got him, and then there's a couple other guys that have some really good experience with keeping up like our FA repair station manuals and things. So we're playing around with different ideas. We want to be strategic about a way to make it even better than what it was from the standpoint of, I think we might more or less have somebody kind of dedicated to, not a mechanic, but somebody who's dedicated to making sure that when somebody calls for the shop, we've got kind of a project manager person who's able to answer every single call, respond to emails, and be kind of a go-between liaison between the shop and the person who's calling, just from the standpoint of, I feel like that's been a weak point, because, you know, right now, if you call and you're trying to get a hold of somebody to work on your airplane, they gotta put down whatever it is they're doing, come across and stop, which is really a safety issue too, is they're stopping whatever they're doing to go answer a call about something that's months in advance, you know, months out or whatever it might be. And then they got to go back, figure out where they were, make sure they get everything put back together the way it's supposed to. You know, so really we're excited about trying to do, that's going to be kind of a new position for us, but I think we've got some ideas on how to do that. Other than that, just plugging along.
How's avionics doing?
Avionics are still strong. I mean, people have been really, like everything else, people have been willing to invest into stuff. Our avionics shop is over in Galesburg, and they're booked out probably a month and a half, 2 months, which every project takes at least
That's
that
not too
long.
bad, yeah.
It's not too bad, but you know, much beyond that. And that's not planning for any of our own projects, you know. But we've been we're just about done with our next, like a G3X panel on 989 Sierra Papa, should be done here in the next couple weeks. So I'm going to Galesburg tomorrow to check on it.
Yeah, I'm looking
I
forward
want
to
to fly with one of those.
Exactly, yeah.
And you got the GFC 500, right?
Yep, so putting in the Garmin Autopilot, the G3X, and it's gonna be really cool.
that'll be fantastic.
It will be, yeah. And from a training aspect, I'm really excited about, which I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, about it can switch back and forth between steam gauges and the G1000 display. So you can have it, even though it's on a screen, it'll pop up with an attitude indicator and airspeed indicator and stuff like that.
Mm.
And
Oh,
so
it'll give you a 6-pack.
it'll give you a 6-pack, yeah.
Can the instructor fail this?
And supposedly, which I haven't seen it, but supposedly, yeah, you can fail, go through and fail, which would be awesome in a
Yeah.
training environment.
G1000, put a sheet of paper out.
Yeah.
Cutout in it.
Exactly, yeah. So
There's
it,
only one failure mode on G1000, that's a black screen.
yeah, basically,
Yeah.
yeah, total failure.
Yeah.
So we're excited. I mean, that'll be good. And our goal is to continue to work those through, and obviously they end up being their own airplanes. They end up being a little bit of a slower project typically, but this will be a second one, and it should be done, like I say, in the next couple weeks. So
That's great.
yeah.
And is the plan to move ahead with that same conversion on some of the others?
Yeah, we've already bought the components now for 740 Sierra Papa. So then all of our SPs will be that way. And then we still have intentions to do it on the rest of them.
I
We've got,
don't care about the Rs.
yeah, exactly, yeah. I was thinking that actually be kind of neat for those from the standpoint of they're a little bit lower useful load, and this saves, I think, 30 or 40 pounds,
Yeah.
you know, which every bit helps.
The Rs aren't used quite as hard as the SPs, it seems like. too.
Yeah, it just kind of depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Yeah, people like the G1000. We have one of each in our SG1000. But yeah, everyone prefers this.
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, it definitely makes a difference. And then, then from there, we'll decide what we're gonna do as far as what we sell and keep and all that. All right.
Thank you, sir.
So, yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Any additional commission member reports? Thank you for your excellent work on the solar power project. by the way. That's a huge task. Staff report.
Nothing from the staff report, nothing too much, probably take a day off here at the end of the month for my birthday. 26th. Literally towards the end of the month. Actually, I think it's on a weekend, so. Next month, just a heads up that next month we have the selection of officers. So if there's going to be rotation, maybe I would encourage folks to talk amongst themselves
Okay.
individually. Make the process a little easier. And that's all I got.
All right, so our next meeting is July 8th. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
How did we adjourn?
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you for that, Jeff.
Thank you. Have a great day or evening now.